Hey mamas, so last vlog I talked a little bit about trigger stacking and the window of tolerance and how these triggers can build up to take us out of the window of tolerance. Today I want to talk about childhood trauma, attachment trauma, and how that affects where we are in that window of tolerance. So if you grew up in a household that felt quite stressful, where you didn't necessarily feel surrounded by emotionally mature people, where it didn't always feel safe, where events weren't always predictable, where perhaps one member of your family was more emotionally volatile than another. Perhaps you had a sibling who had special needs, so you had to take more of a back seat. This kind of environment means that your system was probably wired to keep you in a state of maybe hypervigilance, but definitely alertness, awareness of what was going on around you. And that alertness meant that you needed things such as cortisol, adrenalin, to keep you in this alert state. Now, there's nothing wrong with that at all, but what isn't great is when these adrenaline and cortisol levels stay elevated for a long time. Not only do you get used to that becomes your new normal, but also it can cause quite significant physical effects because your body's not meant to be in constant hyper arousal, constant readiness to go into fight, flight, fawn, or freeze. So what your body would have done in this environment as a child would have kept you in this state of readiness to fight, flight, fawn, or freeze because it was efficient to do so. You can kind of picture your body saying, well, shall we lower these levels? Maybe not, because every time we've tried to lower them, something happens where we need to be on our guard or protecting ourselves or wary of what's going to happen next because it might be unpredictable or chaotic. So your body quickly learns not to bother lowering the levels of these stress hormones, which, like I said, means that you get used to it, but it also means that you stay in that place for much longer than is good for you. So the reason I'm talking about this is because it gives you background as to why it might take you far less time to feel you're going into that red zone than someone else, or a far less important or less significant event for you to feel triggered. And that's because your body, up until you do the work, is set at a level much higher in that window of tolerance than someone that hasn't experienced a childhood where they needed to be so on alert. So not only are you put into that red zone more quickly, so it might take less for your children, your partner, people around you to trigger you, but it also means that you're going to spend more time in that zone than other people. So it will take longer for you to come back down and to feel regulated again. So it's much, much harder for people who have suffered attachment trauma, a stressful or challenging childhood, than for others to create that regulated system. That doesn't mean it can't be done. Of course it can. And that means we create that safety, that predictability, that connection with safe others, safe adults that you didn't get before. That is a big part of what we do with inner parenting, soothing that inner child, creating that safety that she needs so that her adrenaline levels, her cortisol levels slowly edge down because you realize you don't need them all the time. You're no longer a child dependent upon unpredictable, unreliable people who weren't giving you that unconditional love that you needed. So don't worry, it can absolutely be done. And I hope that's also given you a bit of understanding as to why you get triggered so easily compared to other people and why it takes you up to, the maximum can be 3 days. 3 whole days to come back down. So it's quite amazing. So hopefully that's given you a bit more compassion for yourself. You're not alone and we can absolutely fix this.